What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. I'm gonna sing a song all day long. I'm searching.
That's what we're doing here. We're searching, trying to find the truth. That is our goal, our mission every day, to seek the truth, to speak the truth, and when we find it, to stand on the truth. But we're searching every single day, and I'm glad to have you join the search with us. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Tavis Smiley. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. I've been waiting on this hour. I love me some Sandy Banks. And in this hour, conversation with Sandy about whether or not it's time to scrap that people of color label and its twin, communities of color. Along with all the pretense that all non-white groups can be seamlessly yoked together with in the fight for equality by the color of our skin. These sort of one-dimensional terms that suggest we can only move forward in lockstep. During more than 3 decades at the LA Times, Sandy Banks has served as reporter, editor, editorial writer, and internship director. But she's best known, for those of us who love her work, for her personal columns, which focus on private lives, public policy, and people who inspire and infuriate us. It is my pleasure once again to welcome to this program LA Times columnist Sandy Banks. Sandy, how are you today?
I'm very well, Tavis. Thank you, and I'm glad to be on because I love your interviews, and I love listening to you, and I love talking to you. Thank you.
You are too kind. You are too kind. I wanted to talk to you the minute I saw this piece drop. The piece is titled, you can find it on the LA Times, Google it, it's everywhere. Lessons of the Audio Leak. Solidarity is dead. Let's ditch the label people of color. Lessons of the Audio Leak. Solidarity is dead. Let's ditch the label people of color. You know how I do it around here. We have an hour. So let me start with a broad question and we'll narrow our way. Let me start before I even do that by saying, as you well know, Kevin De Leon gave us the talk radio exclusive, and I spent an hour with him in this studio. He was seated in that chair right in front of me. And for an hour, we went at it about this, and it got picked up by every news organization in the country. It was the first time he sat for an hour, the first time he had actually faced the black people to whom he had, the folk he had offended most, I think, not only, but certainly most, to my mind, on that tape. So he came in here, and we had that 1 hour conversation. So I've had my say about this tape. I want to give Sandy her say about the tape. So again, the big question I want to ask to begin, because this is where, this is the meat of your column here. When you heard that tape, it put you on the path to writing this column eventually. But just give me your thoughts, broadly speaking, of what you heard, Sandy, when you heard the tape. And for those who have been living under a rock, the tape we're talking about, of course, is the tape of these 4 Latino leaders in this city who were on tape just demonizing and bashing everybody, principally African Americans. Those persons, Nuri Martinez, Ron Herrera, Gil Cedillo, and Kevin De Leon. Nuri Martinez, quick update, as you may remember, resigned her post as president of the LA City Council. Ron Herrera resigned his position as a powerful labor leader in this city. And by the way, the person who took Ron Herrera's place, in case you don't know, this is a black woman. First time a black woman has led the Federation of Labor here in L.A. We're working on getting her on this program as a guest. We'll talk more about that. Her name is Yvonne Wheeler. But Yvonne Wheeler, believe it or not, a black woman for the first time ever, took that powerful labor position after Ron Herrera resigned. So that is history in and of itself. We'll talk to Yvonne Wheeler in the days ahead on this program. Kevin De Leon has refused to resign even to this day. And Gil Cedillo is out of the office in a matter of days anyway. He lost his race earlier this year, and so he's termed out, but he did not resign, and it appears that he will survive not resigning in the next couple of weeks until he retires from his position on the LA City Council. So that update for those across the country who've been wondering, or may have forgotten how we arrived at this point and where we are today. All that said, Sandy, your thoughts on the tape?
I was angry, of course, but I wasn't surprised. I've been around a long time. I think you used the phrase once about we are the last generation connected to the Jim Crow era, and I am part of that. And so I know these feelings exist. But what really got my goat and why it took me a long time, more than a week after that, to write this was in their apologies, they all kept talking about, I'm serving people of color and communities of color, and I've done my best with that, and I'm going to keep serving people of color. And what they really meant was we're going to keep serving Latinos. They didn't mean people of color because they were clearly, denigrating all these other people of color. And I just start thinking about that and how it's used as cover so often for people who are really concerned with only their group, or for people who are not concerned with any of our groups, but use the umbrella label. And so that's what got me thinking about it. And I picked the brain of two very smart people, USC professor Jody Armour and Professor Guerra at Loyola Marymount, who has studied ethnic relations in L.A. for a long time. And what it made me, and having the labor leader there too, also really piqued something in me, because I remember back in the 1980s that was when I started at the Times, the early 80s, and the Justice for Janitors movement was getting all this attention, and it was, going to raise to living wages for janitors. But what was never mentioned in all of that was that most of the janitors in Los Angeles had been black for generations, and they were making good enough wages. I remember talking to many black men who had bought homes and raised kids and put kids through college on the wages they made as janitors. But what happened when a flood of immigrants came in was the companies began organizing them to get contracts with these companies, who then hired the black people that they had, employed to do the job, and contracted it out to immigrants who were working at much lower pay. And so then, they became concerned that, these people aren't making enough pay, so the labor unions began organizing them, and it culminated in this big, giant Justice for Janitors march that got worldwide attention and raised their wages. But nothing ever happened. There was no justice for those black men who'd lost those jobs and whose families then, wound up often having to move. That's part of the big push to Lancaster and Palmdale and Moreno Valley, because these men could no longer support their families. So you had justice for one group of people, but that was built on the injustice to another group, and that was my group, our group. And that's kind of the story of America. And so that's when it just struck me that something needs to be said about this. And black people, we've always known that we need coalitions. It was Jewish people that partnered with us during the civil rights struggle. Antonio Villaraigosa was elected the first Latino mayor with black support, and that was because that was a man that walked the walk. He had been coalitioning with black people since he was in high school. So we always knew that we need coalitions, but as our numbers shrink in this city, the other groups don't need us for coalitions. So what do we get out of people of color? That's what struck me. And I was, Tavis, I was afraid kind of a little to do it, because I didn't want to be seen as, denigrating the label or the concept. I think the concept is a good one. And I think we've made it, we're making it work in national elections. But I just wanted to say that it's not a useful label right now for groups that are not the dominant group among the people of color.
When I saw the piece, again, with that headline especially, I said, Sandy, who's never been, Sandy's she's a columnist, and so she's unafraid to express herself. You have to be when you're writing a column. But it was a bold statement. It was a bold move to say to this city and to the nation that maybe it's time to stop using that phrase, people of color. Maybe communities of color just doesn't serve us well as a phrase. And I've always believed that slogans aren't solutions anyway. So that sloganeering, if I can get it out, sloganeering and these labels that we have put on us, to your point, don't often serve us well. But it was a bold piece to write. And when we come forward, I want to ask, before we get back into interrogating the actual piece, 'cause I got questions specifically about some things you said in the piece. But I want to ask, when we come forward, what kind of response Sandy got. You heard her say a moment ago that she was a bit afraid to write the piece. I'm glad she did. We need to have this conversation. We're going to have it for the next hour. But I am curious as to what kind of response she got when she put that piece out in a city like L.A. that is multicultural, multiracial, and multi-ethnic. So delighted to have L.A. Times columnist Sandy Banks join us in this hour. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Leaving things half done? Not a good option. Like a half-baked peach cobbler. A gummy crust? I don't think so.
A half-done hairdo.
All done.
Shouldn't the curls be on both sides?
Or a half of a domino.
Bam! Big six!
But where's the other half?
Don't go halfway, especially with your immunity to COVID-19. Keep everyone safer this season by staying up to date with your vaccines and boosters. Visit myturn.ca.gov to find one near you. Brought to you by the California Department of Public Health.
Bring in the new year with Cat Williams. He's coming to Ontario in the Toyota Arena December 30th. And in Los Angeles in the Microsoft Theater December 31st.
I don't know what I'm gonna do about this light bill. Just hit the blunt one time and see if it don't change your perception of what's important in your life. I don't know what I'm gonna do about this life. Them lights. I got 12 candles. I've been waiting to burn them.
He's back with an all-new show. It's the award-winning comedian, Cat Williams.
Just so you knew they was lying, they said some next that don't even make mathematical sense. They said there's a chicken wing shortage, but we got plenty thighs.
Cat Williams with his special guests, Mark Curry, Tommy Davidson, Tony Roberts, Daphne Springs, and Pretty Ricky. In Ontario, get tickets at Ticketmaster. In Los Angeles at AXS.com. Bring in the new year with Cat Williams.
At Cedars-Sinai, we're honored to be named the #1 hospital in California and the #2 hospital in the nation in U.S. News & World Report's Best Hospitals Honor Roll. We're also proud to be named #1 in 6 specialties in Los Angeles. Thank you to our physicians, nurses, academic leaders, and thousands of other team members who bring their best to Cedars-Sinai every day. Learn more about our top-ranked care at cedars-sinai.org.
With one of the best savings rates in America, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Slash to be in your band.
Next up for lead guitar. You're in.
Cool. Yep, even easier than that. And with no fees or minimums on checking and savings accounts, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, and they're like, it's better than yours.
Spilled your milkshake? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker. And each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading Ordinary brand. So you can get back to your milkshake.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, and they're like, it's better than yours.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to Sandy Banks, LA Times columnist on KBLA Talk 1580. Delighted to have her in as our guest in this hour. So, Sandy, before I move forward, that question that I posed a moment ago, what kind of response did you get to the column? As you said, you were somewhat afraid to push it out there. And again, for those who may have just tuned in and didn't see Sandy's piece of just a few days ago, it's called Lessons of the Audio Leak. Solidarity is dead. Let's ditch the label people of color. So we're talking in this hour about whether or not it's time to do away with labels like people of color, communities of color, because we, black folk, don't really get much out of that these days. But what kind of response did you get when that piece hit?
Well, I tell you, Tavis, it was surprising to me. The emails started flowing in really early in the morning. It ran. And almost all of them were from white people and saying, yay, brava, great column, which made me a little nervous, you know. I got kind of a stomach ache because I thought, all right, these people are probably equating this with my endorsement of colorblindness, which I don't endorse, which I think is ludicrous and is just a way of avoiding, you know, the issue of race. But the more that came in and the more I read them, there were people who were very thoughtful and who were struggling with how to address these kind of racial issues themselves, and they were still mostly white, I would say. And again, some people said up front, I'm a white woman, I'm 73, I'm this is that. But some I could tell from the names, or I could tell from kind of where they lived. But they were really eager for a place to talk about this, and a place and someone to help them sort out people of color and all that. And I think, my two sources in the column were wonderful. And one, Jody Armour, his point was that this is really a way to, evade blackness and to distance yourself from blackness, and that people of color are really trying to, it's a route to whiteness, or honorary whiteness, to status, to the high status group. And so black people are going to be at the bottom of the people of color hierarchy, just we're at the bottom of the American public hierarchy. And people were intrigued by that, and white people thought that was a new perspective they hadn't thought about. So I guess I was heartened a little because there were so many people that were willing to, ask some questions and wanted to understand this. But I was also perplexed by there wasn't a lot of black people. But I have to say, as time went on, more and more black people were responding. And I got a couple of, angry, why do you hate Latinos kind of things from Latino readers. But I also had a lot of Latinos responding, that agreed with me. So it was a real surprise for me. And I had expected, mostly black people to respond. But it did. It gave me hope a little bit too. I have to say there were very few ugly responses.
Yep. I'm laughing here because first of all, you should know by now. You've been black your whole life. You should know by now. We ain't ever the first ones to do anything, Sandy. It takes us a while.
That's right. And they probably don't subscribe to the LA Times. Somebody had to tell them about it, and then they read it later, or it was on Twitter or whatever.
It took us some time to get our thoughts together and to get around to ping the paper. The good white folk are always first to respond to everything, and black folk are always the last to respond to stuff. I don't know if we're at the bottom of the hierarchy, but I know we are last when it comes to sounding off. Unless you do and say certain things to us, then we'll get our backs up pretty quickly. But to that point about black folk, the point that you said that USC law professor Jody Armour makes in your piece about the fact that these categories, these labels aren't good for us, people of color, communities of color, there are others, because we still end up being at the bottom of those hierarchies. My question point blank is whether or not you think he's right about that we are, black folk, are at the bottom of these hierarchies, even though people love to use these phrases.
I think we are. And I guess it depends on how each individual perceives the hierarchy, and whether it's a kind of an established, institutionalized thing or whether it's an informal thing. But we've had stories recently about Latinos. Most of the harassment and racial harassment going on in workplaces now that comes to the attention of authorities is Latinos demeaning black people. We had a series of stories on Elon Musk and his factories where you got people using the N-word regularly and openly and calling the places that black people work the plantation. So there is and I don't know if this is a Trump-fueled revolution now that everybody's free to say what they've always been thinking, or do they think less of us now? I think some of it is as other groups grow, we're no longer the biggest minority in the country, and we're the smallest in Los Angeles. So I don't know if that's empowering people to let their racism out, but I do think, I think that if workers employers are given choices between blacks and Latinos, they're going to choose Latinos. They're not going to complain. They're going to work hard. Black people are always wanting something. That's we built this country. We are entitled to want things. Affirmative action. Is another thing that was not created just to get diversity. It was recompense to us for not being able to be educated, for not being able to go to good schools, for not being able to live in good neighborhoods that we were by law blocked out of. And now you got Asian Americans complaining about affirmative action, it's not helping them. Well, it wasn't meant for you, and I think that's I have a line in there about people of color being a way for others to glom on to our gains, the gains that we made, over centuries, little by little. And I don't want to. I always worry about, now I'm coming off as being, the racist against other people, but I don't feel that way at all. I just feel like we need to get our due.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I do think we're at the bottom of the hierarchy, and I think that's the way America was built. And Jody Armour made a good point. I didn't know this about him, but his mother was Irish, and his father was black, and his mother, he said, had to work her way to whiteness because the Irish were, demeaned too. The Irish, the Italians, they were considered not white when they came here, but she was able to lift herself to whiteness, but that is not something that brown people, black people like us can do, and so we're kind of consigned to be who we are and where we are, and other groups know that and take advantage of that.
You said a few things just here now, as you always do, that just make me think. Let me run through these things right quick and get your quick takes on these, and then we'll after this pivot go back directly inside the piece. Let me start with the latter point you just made. How do you process? Because I have my own views about this. And anyway, how did you process that black folk, to the point you made a moment ago, are always every other group's litmus test?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to process that, Tavis. I don't know even, I'm in my late 60s, and I don't know that I have processed it yet. And I think part of the lesser lifespan we have is because some of those things, I mean, how do you process it? You either have to accept, oh, well, or you have to say we're going to fight it. But then you look around, you look at what's happening in elections around the country, and how do you even fight it? So I don't know that I have processed. I think it eats at me. And I don't, and I used to, I tell you, here's the one thing I do think. There's a generation of young people coming up that have gone to school together, lived together, listened to the same music, gone to the same parties, have the same fashions. I have hope that this next generation, and married each other, no matter the races, I have hope that that next generation is going to blur the lines more so that it won't be black people as the litmus test.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can hold on to.
The other issue that you raise is that we are shrinking black people inside the city of Los Angeles. And this didn't just start with Karen Bass's election, obviously, or prior to. I work for Tom Bradley, as you know. That's the first black mayor of the city. That's how my career in L.A. started. And Tom Bradley, of course, did something that no other mayor will ever do because they've changed the law since then. But he was mayor for 5 terms, 4-year terms, mayor for 20 consecutive years. Tom Bradley was mayor of Los Angeles. And when you look at the data, which is incontrovertible in this regard, black people, the black population in Los Angeles proper was shrinking every year, every time Tom Bradley ran for re-election. So he runs in 69, loses to Sam Yorty. He wins against Sam Yorty in 73. And every 4 years from 73 on for the next 20 years, Tom Bradley stands for re-election. He won every time. But the population of black folk inside the city was shrinking with every election, and yet Tom Bradley continued to win. I raise this issue now because this is not just true in L.A. We're heard across the country, of course, and across the country we know that it's just a matter of time. Pardon me for using the phrase. Just a few years from now, people of color will be the majority in this country. White folk, for the first time, will be outnumbered, but the black numbers continue to shrink. As a black person, given that we are the litmus test and given that we're at the bottom of the hierarchy, how do you process that our numbers are shrinking so dramatically, Sandy?
Again, I think it's, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what process means on that, Tavis, because it's just a fact. And, of course, they don't want us to have more babies, because they don't want us to grow. But I can't process it. And I want to ask you, that Tom Bradley story is phenomenal. And what was different? I know he ran a great campaign, and I'm sure you have some credit for that. But were people more open-minded then, or what allowed him to win all those terms without having to rely on black people to carry him?
Yeah, I think there are a couple answers. One, I mean, Tom Bradley got really connected, and I've got a critique of this as well. I mean, I work for Tom Bradley, but because I work for you doesn't mean I can't critique you. I thought that Tom Bradley, in retrospect, was oftentimes too close to the white West Side folk. That troubled me at times, even working for Tom Bradley. But one, he had the backing of the white West Side money. The Jewish community certainly supported Tom Bradley, but more than that, Tom Bradley was a coalition builder. And whenever people harken back to the Tom Bradley era in the city, the first thing you talk about is that he built the kind of coalition that nobody since him has built. Villaraigosa, who you mentioned earlier, did a good job. Karen Bass, we'll talk about in a second. Karen Bass has done that, it seems, this time around, building a coalition to get elected. But ultimately, it was because Tom Bradley was the ultimate coalition builder. And I think that's what made him, allowed him to survive 4 or 5 terms and almost become governor of this state. I'm still saddened to this day, still sick to my stomach to this day, that Tom Bradley lost being the black governor of California by less than, not even, but less than 1 vote per precinct in the state of California. That's how close he became. He came to becoming the black governor of this state. More with Sandy Banks when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We may be LA's newest talk station, but when you're punching above your weight, it's not about whether you can throw a punch. Can you take a punch? We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. And we don't black down.
I'm Mike Moore, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The U.S. is proposing an interim solution to the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. Longtime resident Brooke Floyd has been boiling her water for years and says it's long overdue.
I want our water to be fixed. I want my children to be able to turn on the faucet and brush their teeth.
The Justice Department said in a statement it filed a proposal to appoint a third-party manager to stabilize the Mississippi city's public drinking water system. In Georgia, a former Brunswick district attorney is slated for a court hearing in late December. Jackie Johnson is accused of hindering the police investigation behind the death of African-American Ahmaud Arbery in February of 2020. She allegedly told officers not to arrest the suspected gunman, but her lawyers say there's no evidence. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
South LA, West Athens area, we're seeing a collision blocking the right lane, taking the 105 west. They're putting this around Vermont, West 105. The right lane taking over the crash, busy from the 110. South LA, that 110, a lot of high traffic volume. North 110, Century up towards the 10 freeway. La Crescenta, your 210 east at Lowell, a crash onto the right shoulder here. And a busy drive in Rowland Heights Industry taking that 60 west. Fullerton Road towards Santa Anita. Had a crash in that area earlier. That's now out of our way, but still seeing a busy drive.
NetSpend All Access. Get the mobile banking account with perks that add up. Banking services provided by and account established by Pathward NA. Member FDIC. Deposit account opening is subject to registration and ID verification. Terms and costs apply.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC is on the doorstep of making their first appearance in the 9-year history of the Division I college football playoffs. The 11-1 Trojans moved up to number 4 in this week's playoff ranking. All the Trojans have to do is beat Utah on Friday in the Pac-12 Conference Championship game in Vegas. The 3 teams above the Trojans, Georgia, Michigan, and Texas Christian. More good news for the Trojans. Sophomore quarterback Khalid Williams has emerged as the frontrunner for the Heisman Trophy Award. Norman Powell scored 22 of his 32 points in the fourth quarter to spark the Clippers to a 118-112 win at Portland. The Lakers play Portland tonight at Crypto.com. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're a slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP. Ho, ho, ho.
KBLA Talk 1580 wishes you a happy holiday and wants to bless you with one night only. A Wonder Winter's Night presented by Stevie Wonder's House Full of Toys benefit concert. Saturday, December 17th at Microsoft Theater. Download the KBLA Talk 1580.com mobile app to enter to win a pair of tickets. This has been a community call to action brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580.
Once
Saturday, December 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come out and enjoy a free community health fair, co-sponsored by Pleasant Hill Baptist Church Health Ministry and the Central Neighborhood Health Foundation. The fair will be held on the church grounds at 2009 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard with free health screenings, refreshments, jumpers for the kids, a visit from Santa, entertainment with a DJ, free food giveaway for the first 100 people who attend, as well as raffles and other prizes. There will also be open enrollment health insurance representatives present. Attendees can get free blood pressure, glucose, HIV and STD testing, a dental screening, fluoride varnish, COVID testing, vaccines and boosters. Flu shots will also be offered. Housing navigation, mental health support, and education services will be available. Don't miss this free community health fair. Tell somebody and receive the gift of preventative health services this season. See you all on Saturday, December 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 2009 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Los Angeles.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here for KBLA Talk 1580. We're live in Los Angeles at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. And I'm speaking to some of the attendees today to see why it was so important for them to be here.
I find it important to be here as a business owner and entrepreneur because I want some more capital and I'm not really a fan of loans. So it's really interesting to see how people have gained wealth and what different spaces to advance my money in, whether it be stocks, digital.
And why do you think it's important for a company like Chase to promote building generational wealth in Black and brown communities?
I mean, it's important to me as one of the biggest banks in the world to promote Black wealth because most banks don't really, in my opinion, care about the money that I'm spending as they would, opposed to a white counterpart that might have the same dollar amount in their accounts.
Well, you can bet on Chase offering insights on financial health, the path to home ownership, and entrepreneurship. It's the Chase Advancing Black Wealth Tour.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
Sandy Banks, I hope I answered your question about Tom Bradley. That's the way I see it. He was a great coalition builder, and that's what allowed him to be mayor of the city of L.A. for 20 years. I want to get back, though, to some things that you said that I want to sort of interrogate. You mentioned these white people, many of them who responded to the piece that you wrote. In case you just tuned in, we're talking to Sandy Banks of the L.A. Times about her provocative piece. It got a whole lot of attention when it dropped. The headline, Lessons of the Audio Leak, Solidarity is Dead. Let's ditch the label people of color. We'll talk in a moment about whether or not solidarity really is dead. But I'm curious to all those white people that responded to you, and your sense was that they were, advancing this notion of they were applauding. Let me rephrase that. They were applauding the piece you wrote. They liked the article, but they liked it because it spoke to them in this vein of colorblindness, which I don't like, and I know you don't subscribe to it either. But what do you make of their obsession with colorblindness? So that when they see a piece like this that says get rid of labels like people of color, get rid of labels like communities of color, they think, yay, somebody advancing the notion of colorblindness. What is their obsession with colorblindness as you see it?
Because they're desperate to be on the right side of things, but yet they're not able to just see us as regular full people, and so they have to hold up an idea that, well, I just see the black people like anybody else, and I'm colorblind. I don't see color. That's, I hear that a lot. I heard a lot of people. I grew up taught not to see color, and I think that gives them, it's got to be uncomfortable to have been in control and in power for all these generations, and now everywhere you look, all the ads on TV and the magazines and all, it's black people everywhere, that has to be uncomfortable. And one thing Jody Armour said, he talked about that there's been a message that is etched into our psyches by America, and that is that we're at the bottom, and that it's that color matters, because even when they talk about colorblind, light-skinned people are okay, but the darker you are, and we heard that in the tape when Nuri Martinez was mocking the indigenous people that have people Koreatown, and they're dark and they're little and they're ugly, and so I think a lot of it is I think it's complicated, but I think they don't want to give up what they had, and who knows, if I was in power, all these centuries, I might not want to give it up either.
Yeah.
But I think that colorblindness is their way of saying, we're okay, we're right, we like you, we just don't see that you're black.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I find myself reminding people all the time, because I hear that as often as you do, and I remind people all the time, the good white people who I talk to, since they seem to like MLK. That's one Negro who they did like, MLK.
Yes.
So I use him as the way in, and I share with them that nowhere in King's writings, nowhere in his speeches, nowhere in his sermons, nowhere will you ever hear King use the phrase colorblind anything. He did not believe in colorblindness. He wanted black folk to be respected for who we are. He wanted our humanity and our dignity to be celebrated. But he never advanced this notion of colorblindness, and that tends to get their attention from time to time if they know that King didn't believe in colorblindness. Maybe you're not on the right track then. So I just use King as my way in. In the headline of your piece, as I said a few times already, and I'll say again, lessons of the audio leak, solidarity is dead. Let's ditch the label people of color. Is solidarity dead to your mind?
No, it's not dead. It's not dead, and I have to say, I mean, I'm sure you know this too. In the newspaper business,
you don't
now,
write
we
the
want
headlines.
Readers.
Yeah, exactly.
We want readers, so let's go with the biggest, the boldest headline we can.
Clickbait. Yeah, I got you.
Right,
yeah.
right. I think it may be dead in Los Angeles. I mean, at least in politics, it may be dead because politics is all about winning and getting what you want. And and I was thinking even during our break, Tavis hadn't approached me before, but America has changed. I mean, we are more capitalistic. We are crueler. We are more, the top, the CEO pay has risen dramatically while ours has not. So I think it's also a cruel, it's an every man for himself culture now that we live in. And that makes it harder to build coalitions. It makes it harder to feel like somebody has taken something from you. They're taking your spot in college or whatever. So I think that's a part of it too. And I think in Los Angeles, I mean, I want to know what you think about Karen Bass's win too, because I think that was a case where it worked, but just barely, kind of, know.
Nope. You put it together. You said it correctly. Just barely, kind of, is the way that I would put it. And here's the real test. The real test, and you've been hearing the promo. Everybody's been hearing. We're doing a big celebration, big party for Karen Bass, a street party basically, right behind the station at the intersection of Lemert and Vernon on Saturday, December the 10th. From 10 to 1, we're going to have a big celebration with some great musical acts. I was on the phone all day yesterday confirming musical acts. I'm going to tell you the next day or two some big names who are coming to perform on the stage on Saturday, December the 10th. Since Sandy opened the door, let me just plug it right quick. Saturday, December 10th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Lemert and Vernon, big stage, free, food trucks, celebrities, elected officials, community leaders, and Karen Bass will be on the stage at 11 a.m. With KBLA Talk 1580, 11 a.m. on Saturday, December 10th. It's all free. Come out as we celebrate. We're calling it Welcome Home, Karen Bass. That's our big event, Saturday, December the 10th. So some news in the next 48 hours here about some big name acts who are performing and the like. So you don't want to miss our big street party honoring and celebrating Karen Bass on Saturday, December the 10th. And I say all that to say, Sandy, to your point, that she put it off, built a coalition just barely, kinda, and she got through it. But that ain't the real test. We talked about Tom Bradley earlier, who stayed in there for 20 years, based on his coalition building. We're going to see how Karen Bass does in the first term. Of course, she can't do but 2 terms anyway because of the limits. But it's one thing to beat the other guy who's a billionaire and spending over $100 million. People get turned off by that, I think. So we will see how she governs. We will see if solidarity really is dead. She's built her career on being, a person that's built coalitions. She started the community coalition. I mean, that's the name of it, the community coalition. That's what she's known for. Whether or not she can govern that way in a city like this right now on this side of that tape is a whole other issue. Tom Bradley didn't have to contend with all of this. We'll see if Karen Bass can pull it off. So I think you and I are simpatico on that, kind of, just barely. But again, the proof's in the pudding. We'll see what happens over the next 4 years. Which leads me to ask, what is your view? You talk about this, you talk not directly, well, you do actually, because Garrett talked about it in his comments to you in the piece. What's your take on identity politics writ large?
I think identity politics is not a bad thing. I mean, I think it's necessary because I think we do. I mean, our lives are defined in many ways by our identity, whether we like it or not. And we do have different needs and different views and different ways of being, of thinking about things. And I don't think identity politics is a bad thing. I think that within or surrounding identity politics, you can identify values that are central to all of us, that we can coalition around. But I don't think that's being done because I think the people with the biggest groups say, well, we could steamroll over these people, and get what we need. And it's easy to convince yourself that what you want is what everybody wants. But, there are certain values and there are certain needs and that are not, in the specific. Like, let's say Latinos may want more, Spanish language in schools, and black people might want, meals served or whatever. So there are specific things that each group may want, but there are bigger values that we can coalesce around and proudly own our identity and accept. It's like you said about how, they want to, just kind of put us at the bottom and with a litmus test.
Yeah.
But there is so much that we have to offer all these other groups because of our history and because of our resilience and our strength. So, I just bought this little thing bag to carry in my purse that says, I am Black History.
I love it. No, the thing, I raised that litmus test issue because what troubles me about what I heard on that tape, there are any number of things that trouble me, and some of this came out, of course, in my conversation with Kevin De Leon. But when it comes to the litmus test issue, what troubles me about it is that, as you well know, and you've written about this many times in the course of your brilliant 30-plus year career at the LA Times, black folk kicked down the door and everybody else walked on through. We kick down the doors. Everybody else marches through. We taught this country how to protest. At our best, we have always been the conscience of this country. And I don't like it when you hear tapes with this kind of, nonsense on it. That makes it hard to imagine what they think or how they think they'd be on the city council. How would you be running the Labor Federation in Los Angeles County if black folk hadn't opened the doors or kicked down the doors and made it possible for you to come in? So we become the litmus test, and now you want to demonize and disenfranchise us? I don't think so. More with Sandy Banks when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Will Smith opens up about the infamous Oscar slap. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News. As a guest on The Daily Show, Will Smith opened up to Trevor Noah about the incident with the Oscar host and comedian Chris Rock at this year's Oscars. Will Smith, who won his first Academy Award later that night, was promoting his forthcoming film, Emancipation, when he spoke with Noah about what life has been like since the shocking incident.
That was a horrific night, as you can imagine. There's many nuances and complexities to it, but at the end of the day, I lost it. And you just never know what somebody's going through. Not that justifies my behavior at all. We just got to be nice to each other, man. The thing that was most painful for me is I took my heart and made it hard for other people. I understood the idea where they say hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. I'm Maisha Cairo, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
I'm asking about Prevnar 20 because there's a chance pneumococcal pneumonia could put me in the hospital.
Age 65 or older, you may be at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. The most commonly reported side effect was pain at the injection site. For additional common side effects and full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
I want to be able to keep my plans.
So I'm asking my doctor about getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20.
KBLA Talk 1580 invites you to join us in celebrating the season of giving by being part of the solution. As we enjoy great food, family, warmth, and well wishes in whatever our festive tradition may be, we share the beauty of the season by reaching out to the less fortunate. Please help us to help others with the KBLA Cover the Houseless Cozy Community Coat and Blanket Drive. All you have to do is drop off new or clean, gently used winter coats and blankets in the KBLA lobby during business hours, now through December 20th. All of the coats and blankets will be donated to unsheltered individuals and families experiencing houselessness. Simply bring your donation to 4434 Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, near Vernon Avenue, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays. That's 4434 Crenshaw in historic Leimert Park. During the holidays and every day, let's remember, we keep us safe. We keep us warm. We are the safety net. And together, we can cover the unsheltered. Get caught up in the spirit of the season, the spirit of love. Make a difference with your friends at KBLA Talk 1580.
Find a righteous rage and don't be afraid to say what you see. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
Apparently, our phones are blowing up. The little statement that I made a few moments ago about Saturday, December the 10th, and some big name acts performing and celebrating Karen Bass. Phones are lighting up into the studio about folk who want to be vendors and have other concerns and issues that they want to raise. And no, I shouldn't say concerns and issues. Folk want to be vendors. It's all good stuff. They want to be vendors. They want to participate. If you're interested in that stuff, you got to call the office, not the hotline. Call the office, 323-290-4690. You want to be a vendor? You want to be present with us that day to sell your wares, whatever you want to do. That's a business matter. So call the front office, 323-290-4690. Once again, 323-290-4690. We'll get you to our sales team, and they'll take care of that stuff. For those of you who are interested in being a part of our celebration for Karen Bass, Saturday, December 10th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the intersection of Leimert and Vernon. More about that in the coming hours, but now back to the few minutes I have left with Sandy Banks. Sandy, if we talked about Dr. King earlier, King once said that our destiny is, as you know, King said our destiny as people is inextricably linked together. None of us walks alone. That's King, that our destiny is inextricably linked together as people. None of us walks alone. If King is right about that, and I suspect he is, on the one hand, and on the other hand, solidarity is dead, what happens in the coming months and years as you see it?
I think we have to restore solidarity. And I liked your metaphor about, we kick down the doors, and all these other people came rushing in. And I'm glad that people came through those. I'm glad to see all these people of color, in college, and these young people getting chances that would not have gotten those chances had it been not for us. But don't try to close the door on us.
That's right. That's right.
That's the key. So I do think we can rebuild. I think this can be a wake-up call. And I'm really heartened by the fact that all these people were massing around city council saying, trying to force them to quit. Mm-hmm. And you had people of all color. There was the part in the tape where I think it was Nuri Martinez said, we don't care about George Gascon. He's with the blacks. Mm-hmm. And you had all these people then showing up at the council meeting, people of every color, wearing T-shirts that said, "We're with the black. I'm with the blacks."
Yep.
And I think that's heartening. So I think this could be a wake-up call for us, and could help us, reevaluate our need for solidarity and our need for coalition building, and that's what I hope will come out of it. But for now, I'm just black. I'm not people of color. I'm just black.
I'm just black. And on that note, when we come forward, I wanted to ask. She basically answered just now the question that I wanted to ask. I'm going to ask it anyway in case there's something else she wants to unpack for me. But if you do away with terms like people of color and communities of color, what do you replace it with? I think you just heard Sandy's answer already, but when we come forward, I'll ask that question of her directly and expressly. Sandy Banks is on KBLA Talk 1580.
We don't try to be all things to all people. We just remain true to who we are. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, reminding you when we fight, we win. Asian Americans Advancing Justice is the nation's largest legal and civil rights organization for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Founded in 1983 as the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, Advancing Justice LA serves more than 15,000 individuals and organizations every year. Their mission is to advocate for civil rights, provide legal services and education, and build coalitions to positively influence and impact Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and to create a more equitable and harmonious society. To volunteer, make a donation, or seek assistance, visit advancingjustice-la.org. That's advancingjustice-la.org. Or call 888-349-9695. 888-349-9695. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The Institute for Diversity Certification is all about the 3 Ds: dedication, determination, and discipline. Learn more about our globally recognized diversity certification program today by calling 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192, or visit diversitycertification.org. As the #1 organization for certified diversity professionals and also certified diversity executive credentials, diversitycertification.org will provide an opportunity for you to demonstrate dedication to the field, determination to make progress, and more discipline to your process. Go today and learn more about the diversity certification system. Call 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192. Or go to diversitycertification.org. That's diversitycertification.org. The standard of excellence, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
I was reminded during that break of a guest we had on this program some weeks ago. Had an amazing conversation, and people were all over that debate. But the guest's name was Kelly Hernandez. Kelly Hernandez is the author's name, professor back east. Her book is called Racial Innocence: Unmasking Latino Anti-Black Bias and the Struggle for Equality. Again, the book is called Racial Innocence: Unmasking Latino Anti-Black Bias and the Struggle for Equality. A powerful book, an amazing conversation. If you didn't hear it, check out the podcast of that conversation with Kelly Hernandez, or get a copy of that book. And I thought about that, given what Sandy and I have been talking about in this hour and what Sandy wrote in her column, her powerful column. But that book is something I recommend. Racial Innocence: Unmasking Latino Anti-Black Bias and the Struggle for Equality. That book came out before this tape dropped, but the timing of it could not be more propitious. I highly recommend that book to you from the author, Kelly Hernandez, and check out the podcast of our conversation with her by going to any of our platforms. In the 2.5 minutes I have left with Sandy Banks. Sandy, my question was, if we're not going to use terms like people of color, and we're not going to use terms like communities of color, in part because we're at the bottom of that barrel anyway, and you see this sort of a Latino anti-black bias on the part of many, not all, but in that community, what do we replace those terms with?
I think that we should scrap them as a political term, because that signifies that we're all under this umbrella and we all want and need the same thing, which is not true. But if people want to use it in general, that's okay. Mm-hmm. But I just think, and what the Loyola professor found, Guerra found that when he talks to Latinos about what they want to be called, they don't even want to be called Latino. They want to be called Honduran or Mexican or Guatemalan or whatever. So, I just think, we could also go with colors. We're black and we're brown, and but I think that lumping us together is makes it easy for the policymakers and the politicians. But for the rest of us, let us just be who we are. Just call, I'm a black American, and that's what and if someone's a Mexican American or a Cuban American or whatever, or they're Puerto Rican, those are separate groups. They may be, connected by language or culture or customs, but their history and their trajectory in getting here is different.
Yeah.
So, what do we call white? We don't call, I don't know. I just think the labels are a nice way, a tidy way to categorize people.
I got you.
But life is not a tidy thing.
It is not.
It's not tidy at all.
It is not. Like Sandy Banks, I'm a Black American too, or you can just call me Tavis. That works too. Her name is Sandy Banks, and I call her brilliant columnist. 30 plus years now in all kind of roles at the LA Times. I don't know if the LA Times even understands or appreciates this. And there's a brother now running the LA Times. I've known Kevin for years. I'm proud of Kevin. Kevin Merida runs that paper. But there's no black person in this city who has been more dedicated and more devoted and has written better stuff for the LA Times than Sandy Banks. And I hope at some point the LA Times finds a way to honor her. They really don't appreciate all that she has meant to this paper for over 3 decades. But those of us who read her work know why we love Sandy Banks. The piece we've been talking about in this hour is called Lessons of the Audio Leak. Solidarity is Dead. Let's Ditch the Label People of Color by Sandy Banks. Sandy, thank you for the time once again. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Happy holidays to you.
Thank you so much, Tavis. Thank you.
All the best to you. Hour 3 of Tavis Smiley. After news, traffic, and sports, you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Doug Davis, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Vice President Harris hosted French President Emmanuel Macron at Nassau headquarters as part of Macron's state visit this week.